I never thought my life would shatter on a Tuesday. 8 years, that's how long I believed in the fairy tale Jessica and I had built together. 8 years of thinking I'd married my soulmate, my partner, the woman who'd stand by me through anything. I'm Mark, 35 years old, and I've spent the better part of a decade working construction management, pulling 12-hour days in the Arizona heat, building office complexes and shopping centers so my wife could have the life she deserved. Jessica is 33, beautiful in that effortless way that turns heads in grocery stores. She works part-time at a marketing firm downtown, or at least that's what I thought she was doing with her days. We never had kids. "I'm not ready," she'd say whenever I brought it up. "Maybe next year." Next year became the year after, then the year after that. I stopped asking. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. The distance that crept between us like morning fog. The way she'd turn her phone face down during dinner. How she'd suddenly developed a passion for yoga classes that ran late into the evening. The cold shoulder I'd get when I reached for her at night, her body turning away from mine like I was a stranger. But I was working so much, I told myself it was normal. Marriages go through phases. People get busy. I was building us a future while she was apparently building something else entirely. That Tuesday, a monsoon rolled through Phoenix earlier than expected, turning the job site into a muddy mess. My foreman sent everyone home by 3 o'clock. I should have called Jessica to let her know I'd be early, but I wanted to surprise her. Maybe we could grab dinner somewhere nice, talk like we used to. The house was quiet when I walked in. Jessica's silver Honda was in the driveway, so I knew she was home. I called out but got no answer. The kitchen was pristine except for her laptop sitting open on the granite counter, something she never left unattended. That's when I saw it. A message notification had popped up on the screen. The sender was listed simply as D with a red heart emoji. My stomach dropped before I even read the preview. "Can't wait for Saturday, your place or mine." My hands trembled as I touched the trackpad. The laptop wasn't locked. The message thread opened and my world imploded. Months of conversations. Months of flirtation, explicit photos, detailed plans about when I'd be at work. This wasn't some emotional affair or recent mistake. This was calculated, ongoing, systematic betrayal. She'd been living a double life while I was breaking my back to provide for hours. The photos made me sick. Jessica in lingerie I'd never seen, poses she'd never done for me, words of passion she'd never spoken in our bedroom. The man, this D, was sending equally graphic content back. They talked about hotels, about weekend getaways, about how clueless I was. One message from Jessica particularly burned itself into my memory. "Mark works late every day. He has no idea. We could do this forever." I heard the garage door opening. Jessica was coming home. I closed the laptop and walked to the living room, my mind racing. Should I confront her, pretend I hadn't seen anything, pack my bags and leave? My chest felt tight, like I was drowning in our own home. The front door opened, and Jessica walked in carrying Whole Foods bags, humming some song I didn't recognize. She looked radiant, glowing in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in years. "You're home early," she said, not meeting my eyes as she headed to the kitchen. "Job site got rained out," I replied, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "Oh, well, I picked up stuff for dinner, salmon and—" she started. "I saw the messages, Jessica," I interrupted. The humming stopped. The grocery bags hit the counter with a soft thud. She turned around slowly, and I expected to see guilt, shame, maybe tears of remorse. Instead, her face hardened into something I'd never seen before, something cold and calculating. "So," she said, crossing her arms, "you found out. What are you going to do about it?" What? I stared at my wife, this woman I thought I knew, as she stood in our kitchen with the casual confidence of someone discussing the weather. "So," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper, "that's all you have to say." Jessica leaned against the counter, studying her manicured nails. "Mark, let's be realistic here," she replied coolly. "You want to have a meltdown about this? Go ahead, but let me save you some time and explain how this is going to work." The clinical way she spoke sent chills down my spine. This wasn't the panicked confession of someone caught in the act. This was a prepared speech. "If you try to divorce me," she continued, her voice steady and matter-of-fact, "you'll lose half of everything. This house, your savings, your precious truck sitting in the driveway. Arizona is a community property state, Mark. The laws favor me." She paused, letting that sink in. And since I only work part-time thanks to your insistence that I focus on our home, I'll be entitled to alimony. Probably for years. My mouth went dry. She'd clearly thought this through. While I was working overtime to build our life together, she was researching how to tear it apart. "If you try to fight it," Jessica went on, examining her reflection in the microwave door, "I'll drag you through court until you're broke. My lawyer, yes, I already have one, says these things can take years. Depositions, hearings, appeals. How much do you think that costs, Mark? More than you make in construction management, I guarantee you." I felt like I was watching someone else's life implode. "Jessica, we've been married for 8 years. How can you?" I started. "And if you even think about laying a hand on me or David," she interrupted, "you'll go to jail. I'll make sure of it. One bruise, Mark, one raised voice that I can get on recording. Then you'll lose everything and get to explain to your next employer why you have domestic violence charges on your background check." David, so that's what D stood for. She walked closer, her expression almost pitying. "I'm not trying to be cruel, Mark," she said with false sympathy. "I'm just being honest about the situation. You have 2 choices. You can accept that I'm going to see David, or you can leave. But either way, I'm not stopping." "Accept it?" I asked, the words feeling like poison in my mouth. "He's coming over Saturday night, every Saturday night," she announced matter-of-factly. "You can go to a movie, visit a friend, sleep in the guest room, I don't really care, but this is happening whether you like it or not." She reached into one of the grocery bags and pulled out a bottle of wine. "I picked up his favorite Cabernet. Hope you don't mind that I used our joint account." I stood there, paralyzed by the sheer audacity of it all. She wasn't asking for forgiveness or trying to work things out. She was informing me of my new reality like a landlord explaining lease terms. "Why?" I finally managed to ask. Jessica shrugged casually. "David makes me feel alive. You make me feel stable," she replied with brutal honesty. "Boring but stable, I need both." She uncorked the wine with practiced ease. "This way, everyone gets what they want. I get my excitement, you get to keep your precious routine, and David gets me without the messy complications of a divorce." She poured herself a glass and took a sip, watching me over the rim. "It's really quite practical when you think about it," she added with a satisfied smile. That night, I slept on the couch for the first time in our marriage. Jessica went to bed in our room, probably texting David about how well her revelation had gone. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, my mind churning with rage, humiliation, and something else I couldn't quite name yet. Something cold was forming in my chest, something that would change everything. The next few days passed like a fever dream. I went to work each morning, operated heavy machinery, supervised crews, made decisions that affected million-dollar projects, all while feeling like I was watching someone else live my life. Jessica acted as if nothing had changed. She made breakfast, asked about my day, even reminded me to pick up my dry cleaning. The normalcy was suffocating. She'd torn our marriage apart with surgical precision, then gone back to playing house like she'd simply rearranged the furniture. Friday evening, she brought it up again over dinner. "Tomorrow, Saturday," she said casually, cutting into her chicken like she was mentioning grocery shopping. "David will be here around 7. You should probably make plans." I set down my fork. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. 6 months, she answered without hesitation. "No shame, maybe 7. "And you think this is sustainable, that I'll just accept this forever?" I pressed. Jessica dabbed her mouth with her napkin. "Mark, you're a practical man," she replied matter-of-factly. "You've built your entire career on solving problems efficiently. Well, this is efficient. We avoid the financial devastation of divorce, I get my needs met, and you get to keep the life you've worked so hard to build." "What about what I need?" I asked quietly. "You need security, stability. The house, your job, your routine," she answered, gesturing around our dining room. "I'm not taking that away from you, I'm just adding something to my life." Saturday arrived with crystal-clear skies and the kind of heat that makes Phoenix feel like the surface of Mars. I worked in the garage most of the day, organizing tools, anything to avoid thinking about what was coming. Around 6:30, Jessica emerged from the house looking stunning in a dress I'd bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago. "I ordered pizza for you," she said, her tone almost maternal. "It'll be here in an hour. You can eat in the living room, watch TV, whatever you want, just not upstairs." I watched her apply lipstick in the hallway mirror. "Jessica, this is insane. You realize that, right?" I said. She turned to me, and for a moment I saw something that might have been regret flicker across her face. But it vanished quickly. "Mark David makes me feel like I did when we were dating," she replied softly. "Remember that? The excitement, the passion, the way I used to look at you?" Her voice took on a wistful quality. "I loved that feeling. I miss it." "So did I answered quietly. "Then you understand," she said with finality. She checked her watch. "He'll be here soon." I couldn't stay. I grabbed my wallet and keys and left, driving aimlessly through Phoenix's east side while my wife prepared to betray our marriage in our own bedroom. I thought about calling my brother in Colorado, my few close friends, anyone who might help me process this nightmare. But what would I say? That my wife was cheating and had basically dared me to do something about it. I ended up at O'Reilly's Pub, a dive bar near the construction site where I sometimes grabbed beers with my crew. The place was nearly empty on Saturday night. Just me, the bartender, and an old man in a worn leather jacket nursing a Budweiser at the far end of the bar. I ordered whiskey and tried to make sense of my life. Jessica was right about the legal realities. I'd consulted with a lawyer on my lunch break Friday, and everything she'd said checked out. Arizona divorce law would indeed split our assets down the middle. Her part-time income would likely qualify her for alimony. Fighting it would cost me more than I could afford, and winning was far from guaranteed. "Rough night?" the old man asked, his voice cutting through my thoughts. I looked up. The old man had moved to the stool next to mine. Up close, he looked familiar, though I couldn't place him immediately. "You could say that," I muttered in response. He studied my face for a moment, then his eyes widened slightly. Mark Sullivan?" he asked with recognition. I looked at him more carefully. The weathered face, the gray beard, the calloused hands wrapped around his beer bottle. "Jake," I said, recognition finally clicking. "Jake Thompson." My father's best friend nodded slowly. "I'll be damned," he replied. "What?" "Jake Thompson. I hadn't seen him since my father's funeral 5 years ago, and even then he'd disappeared before I could talk to him properly. Dad used to tell stories about their time together. Military service, construction work, adventures that always seemed to end with Jake pulling Dad out of some kind of trouble. "Jesus, kid, you look like hell," Jake said, signaling the bartender for another round. "What's eating at you?" I hesitated. Jake had been Dad's closest friend, but I barely knew the man. Still, something about his presence, steady, unshakable, made me feel like I could trust him, or maybe it was the whiskey. "Marriage problems," I said finally. Jake nodded knowingly. "Been there," he replied with understanding. "Want to talk about it?" And suddenly I did. Everything poured out. Jessica's affair, her cold calculation, the way she'd legally cornered me, tonight's humiliation. Jake listened without interruption, his weathered face showing no judgment, just patient attention. When I finished, the bar felt quieter somehow. Jake stared into his beer for a long moment. "Your father ever tell you about a time we got pinned down in Kandahar?" he asked suddenly. "No," I answered, confused by the change in topic. "Taliban had us surrounded. 3 days, no supplies, no backup coming. We were doomed, basically," Jake continued, his voice steady and matter-of-fact. "But your dad, he had this saying, every problem has a solution. Sometimes the solution just isn't what you expect." He looked at me directly. "How certain are you that this David character will be at your house Wednesday night? Jessica mention any schedule changes?" he asked pointedly. The question caught me off guard. "Wednesday, she said she's switching it up, not just Saturdays anymore," I replied. "Why?" Jake finished his beer and stood up. "Work late Wednesday, stay at the job site until at least 10, he instructed firmly. "Make sure people see you there, remember you being there." He pulled on his jacket. "And after tonight, kid, we never had this conversation." "Jake, what are you?" I started. "Your father saved my life more than once. I owe him," he interrupted, his eyes cold now, distant. "Trust me." He walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. "Oh, and Mark," he added, "might want to think about taking a vacation next week. Somewhere with good cell phone records, credit card receipts, you know, the kind of paper trail that proves you were nowhere near Phoenix." Then he was gone, disappearing into the night like a ghost. I sat there for another hour, Jake's words echoing in my head. What was he planning? Should I try to find him, stop whatever he was thinking? But a part of me, the part that had been humiliated and trapped for days, didn't want to stop anything. When I finally drove home around midnight, Jessica's Honda was the only car in the driveway. The house was dark except for the master bedroom. I slept on the couch again, listening to the air conditioning cycle on and off, trying not to think about what had happened upstairs. Sunday morning, Jessica was making pancakes when I woke up. She seemed refreshed, almost glowing. "Good morning," she said cheerfully. "Coffee's ready." I poured myself a cup, studying her face. "How was your evening?" I asked casually. "Lovely, thank you," she replied without shame or awkwardness. "David's taking me to Scottsdale Wednesday night, some new restaurant he wants to try." My stomach tightened. Wednesday, just like Jake had asked about. "I'll probably work late anyway," I heard myself say. "Big project deadline coming up." "Perfect," she responded with satisfaction. "It works out better for everyone when we have our space." That Monday, I called my brother in Denver. We'd been talking about me visiting for months, and suddenly I felt an urgent need to see him. We made plans for the following week, Thursday through Sunday. A nice long weekend that would require plane tickets, hotel receipts, and plenty of witnesses to prove I was out of state. Tuesday dragged by like molasses. I couldn't concentrate at work, kept checking my phone for messages from Jake. But there were none. I'd begun to wonder if the entire conversation had been some alcohol-induced hallucination. Wednesday morning, Jessica was humming in the shower. She'd laid out a black dress I'd never seen before, expensive-looking lingerie still with tags attached. Through the bathroom door, I could hear her on the phone. "7:30 works perfectly," she was saying. "Mark will be gone until late." I left for work with a sick feeling in my stomach and Jake's words ringing in my ears. Every problem has a solution. Sometimes the solution just isn't what you expect. Wednesday crawled by with agonizing slowness. I threw myself into work with unusual intensity, volunteering for overtime, helping with equipment maintenance, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind occupied. My foreman, Rodriguez, commented that I seemed unusually focused. "Just trying to stay ahead of the deadline," I told him, which wasn't entirely a lie. Around 6, I texted Jessica, "Working late tonight, don't wait up." She responded with a simple thumbs-up emoji. No curiosity about when I'd be home, no complaint about my absence. She was probably relieved. By 8 o'clock, most of the crew had gone home, but I stayed behind with Rodriguez and 2 others, organizing materials for Thursday's concrete pour. I made sure to have conversations, to be seen, to be remembered. If anyone ever asked where Mark Sullivan was on Wednesday night, there would be witnesses. At 9:30, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Don't go home tonight," Jake's voice came through, barely above a whisper. "Stay exactly where you are until I call you back." The line went dead before I could respond. My hands were shaking as I put the phone back in my pocket. Rodriguez noticed my expression. "Everything okay, Mark?" he asked with concern. "Yeah," I managed to say. "Just family stuff." We worked until 10:15. I helped load the last of the equipment, locked up the site office, and sat in my truck in the empty parking lot, waiting. The desert night was clear and cool, stars visible despite the city lights. I tried not to think about what might be happening at my house. At 10:47, my phone rang again. "It's done," Jake said simply. "Go home now, act surprised." "Jake, what did you—" I started to ask. But the line was already dead. The drive home took 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. My street looked normal, quiet houses, porch lights, the occasional dog walker. But as I turned the corner onto my block, I saw them. Red and blue flashing lights painting the night in carnival colors. Police cars, an ambulance, crime scene tape. All in front of my house. I parked 2 houses down and walked toward the chaos on unsteady legs. A uniformed officer stopped me at the tape perimeter. "Sorry, sir, you can't," the officer began. "I live here," I interrupted, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "This is my house." The officer's expression changed immediately. He spoke into his radio, then looked back at me with that particular mix of professional sympathy and suspicion that cops develop. "What's your name, sir?" he asked. "Mark Sullivan, this is 1247 Saguaro Drive," I replied. What happened here?" "Detective Harris will need to speak with you," the officer said. "Can you wait right here?" I stood there watching my life become a crime scene. Neighbors had emerged from their houses, standing in clusters on their driveways, whispering and staring. Mrs. Gray from next door caught my eye and shook her head sadly. 5 minutes later, a woman in a dark suit approached me. Mid-40s, short gray hair, tired eyes that had seen too much. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm Detective Harris. We need to talk," she said with professional authority. She led me to an unmarked sedan parked across the street. We sat in the front seats while crime scene techs moved in and out of my house like ants. "Mr. Sullivan, I need to inform you that we found 2 deceased individuals inside your home tonight," she began carefully. "A woman and a man. Based on identification found at the scene, we believe one of them is your wife, Jessica." The words hit me like a physical blow. Even though I'd been expecting something, hearing it confirmed was different, final. "2 people?" I heard myself ask. "Yes," she confirmed. "We're still working to identify the male victim, but it appears both individuals were shot. We received a 911 call from a neighbor reporting gunshots around 9:15. 9:15. Jake had called me at 9:30. "I need to ask," Detective Harris continued, studying my face carefully, "where were you tonight between 8 and 10 p.m.? "At work," I answered automatically. "The construction site on Indian School Road, working late with my foreman and 2 other guys. We were there until after 10. She wrote that down. "We'll need to verify that," she said. "Do you own any firearms, Mr. Sullivan?" "No," I replied. "Have you recently had any conflicts with your wife?" she asked. I looked at her for a long moment, then decided on honesty. "We were having problems," I admitted. "She was seeing someone else." Detective Harris nodded knowingly. "We're going to need you to come to the station for a more detailed statement," she said. As we drove away, I saw Jake's words burned into the night sky. "Every problem has a solution." The police station at midnight felt like purgatory. Fluorescent lights humming overhead, the smell of stale coffee and disinfectant, the weight of everything that had changed forever pressing down on my shoulders. Detective Harris led me to a small interview room where her partner, Detective Bowen, was waiting. He was younger than Harris, with the kind of aggressive energy that made me uncomfortable. They offered me coffee, which I accepted more for something to do with my hands than because I wanted it. "Let's start from the beginning," Harris said, setting up a recording device. "Tell us about your marriage." For the next 3 hours, I told them everything. The distance that had grown between Jessica and me, my discovery of the affair, her cold ultimatum, the humiliation of the past few days. I was brutally honest about my feelings, the rage, the helplessness, the desire for some kind of justice. "So you were angry," Bowen said, leaning forward. "Angry enough to do something about it." "Angry enough to want to," I corrected carefully. "But I didn't." Harris showed me photographs from the crime scene. Jessica and David, a man I'd never seen before but somehow looked exactly like I'd imagined, both shot in our bedroom. No signs of struggle, no forced entry. "The shooter was either let in or had a key," Harris explained. "Any idea who might have wanted to hurt your wife?" I thought of Jake, of his cold eyes and careful questions, of the way he'd disappeared from my life just as suddenly as he'd reappeared. "No," I answered. They verified my alibi within hours. Rodriguez and the other workers confirmed I'd been at the job site until after 10. Security cameras at the construction office showed my truck in the parking lot. Cell phone towers tracked my location. The timeline was airtight. I couldn't have been home when the murders occurred. But they weren't satisfied. "Did you hire anyone?" Bowen pressed. "Pay someone to do this?" "No," I replied firmly. "Do you know anyone who might have done this as a favor to you?" Harris asked. I thought of Jake's words, "I owe your father." But Jake Thompson didn't exist in any database they could find. He had no address, no phone number, no social media presence. It was as if he'd vanished like smoke. "No," I said again. They released me at dawn with instructions not to leave town. The crime scene tape was gone from my house, but I couldn't bring myself to go inside. Instead, I checked into a motel and slept for 14 hours straight. The investigation continued for weeks. They found no murder weapon, no fingerprints, no DNA evidence that led anywhere. David's family was devastated. He'd been a successful real estate agent with no known enemies. Jessica's family blamed me, of course, despite the airtight alibi. The case went cold within a month. I sold the house, quit my job, and moved to Denver to be closer to my brother. I started over with a new construction company, bought a small apartment, tried to build a different kind of life. Sometimes I'd find myself searching online for Jake Thompson, but there was never anything. No military records, no social media, no obituaries or address. Listings, he'd been my father's best friend for decades, but apparently he'd existed only in the shadows, only when needed. 6 months after the murders, I was drinking alone in a Denver bar when I raised my glass to the empty room and whispered, "Thank you." No one answered, but I knew somewhere out there Jake Thompson, or whoever he really was, had heard me. I never tried to find him. Some debts are paid in silence, and some ghosts are better left undisturbed. Jessica had been right about one thing. Every problem has a solution. She just hadn't expected the solution to come from a man who didn't officially exist, settling a debt to a dead friend by eliminating the people who had trapped his son in hell. The last thing I threw away before leaving Phoenix was the lingerie Jessica had bought for David. The tags were still attached. Some ghosts you don't question. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I've always prided myself on being observant. 5 years of marriage to Sarah had taught me to notice the small things. How she hummed while making coffee, the way she'd scrunch her nose when concentrating, the particular shade of lipstick she wore when she wanted to feel beautiful. But somehow, I'd missed the biggest thing of all. It was a Tuesday evening when my world cracked open like an egg hitting concrete. I'd cut my Dallas trip short by a day. The client meeting wrapped early, and I was exhausted from 3 straight days of presentations and handshakes. All I wanted was my own bed, my wife's arms, and maybe some of her famous lasagna. The house felt different when I walked in. Not wrong exactly, but charged, like the air before a thunderstorm. Sarah was in the shower. I could hear the water running upstairs, so I dropped my luggage in our bedroom and headed to the master bathroom to splash some water on my face. That's when I saw it. A used condom, knotted at the top, sitting in the small wastebasket beside the toilet, poorly hidden under a crumpled tissue. My mind went completely blank. Not angry, not hurt, just empty. We hadn't used protection since our 3rd date 5 years ago. Sarah had an IUD. We talked about starting a family soon, maybe next year when my territory was more established. I stood there for what felt like hours but was probably 30 seconds, staring at this piece of latex that had just detonated my entire life. The shower was still running. Sarah was humming, actually humming, some pop song I didn't recognize. The rational part of my brain started cataloging facts. I'd been gone since Sunday morning. It was Tuesday evening. The trash usually got emptied on Thursdays. Sarah was religious about that schedule. Someone had been in my house, in my bedroom, in my bed, with my wife. I heard the shower shut off. Without thinking, I flushed the toilet and ran the faucet, creating cover noise while I backed out of the bathroom. By the time Sarah emerged in her terry cloth robe, hair wrapped in a towel, I was sitting on the edge of our bed, scrolling through my phone like nothing had happened. "Baby, you're home early." She rushed over and kissed my cheek, leaving a damp spot from her hair. She smelled like her usual vanilla body wash, nothing different, nothing wrong. "How was Dallas?" "Fine, closed the King account," I replied, my voice sounding normal, steady. "Missed you." She smiled that radiant smile that had made me fall in love with her at a coffee shop 6 years ago. "I missed you too," she said warmly. "I was just going to order Chinese for dinner since I thought you'd be gone another night. Want me to cook something instead?" "Chinese sounds perfect," I answered. She bounced off to get her phone, and I sat there processing what had just happened. The old me would have confronted her immediately, would have dragged her back to the bathroom, pointed at the evidence, demanded explanations. But something cold and calculating had taken over my brain. If I accused her now, she'd cry, she'd apologize, she'd beg for forgiveness, or maybe even try to gaslight me, tell me it wasn't what it looked like that she could explain. And then she'd lawyer up, play the victim, tell everyone how I was controlling and suspicious and probably abusive. In our state, she'd get half of everything I'd built. The house I'd saved for 3 years to buy, the business I'd grown from nothing, the life I'd worked 80-hour weeks to create. No, if Sarah wanted to play games, I'd play games, but I'd play to win. That night, lying next to her in bed, the same bed where she'd been with another man, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to forgive her. I was going to destroy her. But first, I needed proof. Real, hard, legally bulletproof proof. She slept peacefully beside me, her breathing soft and even. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, planning my next move. The next morning, Wednesday, I told Sarah I had another work trip scheduled, 4 days in Denver starting the following Friday. She pouted appropriately, told me she'd miss me, kissed me goodbye at the door. I watched her face carefully for any tell, any flicker of excitement about having the house to herself for 4 days. Nothing. She was either innocent or an incredible actress. I was betting on the latter. The next 11 days transformed me into someone I didn't recognize. By day, I was the same husband I'd always been, bringing Sarah coffee in bed, listening to her stories about her book club, planning our weekend activities. By night, I became a detective in my own life. I researched everything: surveillance equipment, divorce law in our state, asset protection strategies, hidden camera reviews on Amazon, the best private investigators, how to gather evidence that would hold up in court. I learned that our state wasn't no fault, adultery mattered, proof mattered. The right kind of evidence could mean she'd walk away. With nothing. That realization hit me like lightning. Nothing. I consulted a lawyer, Stephen Baker, recommended by a colleague who'd been through his own messy divorce. I paid cash for the consultation on Thursday, told him I needed advice for a friend. Stephen was in his 50s, sharp as a knife, with the kind of cold eyes that had seen every variation of human betrayal. "Your friend needs video evidence," he said bluntly. "Audio is good but not always admissible. Video with clear faces, timestamps, obvious adultery, that's gold. Get that and she walks away with nothing but her clothes." I ordered 2 hidden cameras online, small, motion-activated, high definition. One disguised as a phone charger for the bedroom. Another built into a digital picture frame for the living room. Professional grade, lawyer recommended. When they arrived on Monday, I tested them obsessively. The quality was stunning, crystal clear, even in low light. Installing them was easier than I'd expected. Sarah had her yoga class on Wednesday mornings, never missed it, gone for exactly 90 minutes. I positioned the bedroom camera perfectly, angled to capture the entire bed. The living room camera went on the mantel, looking like just another family photo in its innocent frame. But the cameras weren't enough. I needed more. One night Thursday, while Sarah slept beside me, I checked her phone. She'd gotten sloppy, no passcode change, same birthday pin she'd used for years. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through her messages, but my face stayed blank. There he was, Jake flexed biceps in her contacts. Months of messages, starting back in January, innocent enough at first. Gym schedules, workout tips, but they'd escalated, late-night texts, compliments about her form, questions about her marriage, her happiness. His suggestion to grab coffee sometime when she mentioned I was traveling. The recent messages made my stomach turn. "Can't wait for Friday, face blowing a kiss. He'll be gone all weekend. Just like last time, but longer. I'll bring wine, can't stop thinking about Tuesday. Tuesday, the day I'd found the protection, 3 days ago. I screenshotted everything, backed it up to a cloud drive she didn't know about, then deleted the screenshots from her phone. She never stirred. The final piece fell into place when I saw his profile picture clearly. Jake Foster, 34, personal trainer at her gym. Ruggedly handsome in that obvious way, all muscles and arrogant grins. I memorized his face, his schedule, his social media posts. Know your enemy. Friday morning arrived like Judgment Day. I packed my bag carefully, made sure everything looked normal. Sarah made me breakfast, pancakes, my favorite, and walked me to the car. "Drive safe, baby. Text me when you land," she said, kissing my forehead. "I always do," I replied. "Love you." "Love you too," she responded. I drove toward the airport, but at the last exit I turned north instead, toward her parents' house 3 hours away. Robert and Linda needed to know what their daughter had become. More importantly, I needed witnesses, allies, people who couldn't be swayed by her tears and lies when this all came crashing down. The cameras were recording. My phone was tracking the feeds. And somewhere behind me, Sarah was probably already texting Jake that the coast was clear. Game on. What? Robert and Linda Mitchell lived in Millfield, a small town where everyone knew everyone and secrets didn't stay buried long. Robert was old school, a retired contractor who believed in hard work, loyalty, and handling your problems like a man. Linda was the epitome of Midwestern kindness, the type who brought casseroles to sick neighbors and never missed church on Sunday. They'd raised Sarah right, or tried to. That's what made this whole situation so devastating. I'd always gotten along with them. Robert respected me because I worked hard and took care of his daughter. He'd helped me pick out Sarah's engagement ring, shared beers with me during family barbecues, even taught me how to fix the garbage disposal last Christmas. Linda treated me like a son, always asking about my work trips, making sure I was eating enough. When I showed up unannounced at 2:30 on Friday afternoon, they were surprised but happy to see me. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," Robert grinned from his workshop in the garage. "Thought you were supposed to be in Denver." "Change of plans," I replied, trying to smile, but it felt like plastic. "Can we sit down? I need to talk to you both." Linda appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Of course, honey, everything all right?" she asked with concern. "You look terrible." We sat at their kitchen table, the same table where Sarah and I had announced our engagement 4 years ago. My hands were steady as I pulled out my phone, but my voice cracked when I started speaking. "I need to show you both something about Sarah, and I need you to hear it from me, not from her," I said carefully. The color dry. In Ed from Linda's face, Robert's expression hardened. I told them everything. The text messages, the months of lies, the cameras I'd installed, the lawyer I'd consulted. I showed them screenshots of the messages between Sarah and Jake, watching Linda's hand fly to her mouth and Robert's jaw clench tighter with each revelation. "That's my daughter," Robert said quietly when I finished. His voice was controlled, but I could see the rage building behind his eyes. "I raised her better than this." Linda was crying silently, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Are you absolutely sure?" she asked desperately. "Maybe there's an explanation." "I'm sure," I answered firmly. "And tonight you're going to see it for yourselves." Robert looked at me hard. "What do you need from us?" he asked. "I need witnesses, people she can't lie to or manipulate. When this all comes out, she's going to spin a story. She's going to paint me as the bad guy. But if you see it happen, if you witness her betrayal firsthand." I let the implication hang. "You want us to watch our daughter?" Linda couldn't finish the sentence. "I want you to see who she really is," I replied. We waited. The kitchen clock ticked loudly as I monitored the camera feeds from my laptop. Linda made coffee nobody touched. Robert paced between the kitchen and living room, fists clenching and unclenching. At 6:47 p.m., the bedroom camera detected motion. Sarah was changing clothes, putting on a red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. She was doing her makeup carefully, spritzing perfume, changing the sheets on our bed. "She's getting ready," I said quietly. At 7:23 p.m., the doorbell camera I'd installed the previous week caught him arriving. Jake Foster in the flesh, 6'2", muscular, carrying a bottle of wine and flowers. My flowers from my garden. "Jesus Christ," Robert muttered. The living room feed showed them embracing in my entryway, kissing like lovers who'd been apart for months instead of days. She led him to my kitchen, poured him my beer, laughed at his jokes. They moved to the couch, my couch, where he pulled her close and she melted into his arms like she belonged there. Linda was sobbing openly now. "That's not my daughter," she whispered. "That's not the girl I raised." But it was. This was Sarah without her mask, without her performance. This was who she really was when she thought nobody was watching. At 8:15 p.m., they headed upstairs. Robert grabbed his keys. "Let's go," he said grimly. The drive back to my house was silent except for Linda's quiet crying in the backseat. I watched the bedroom camera feed on my phone as Robert drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. By the time we pulled into my driveway at 8:41 p.m., clothes were scattered across my bedroom floor and my wife was in bed with another man. "You recording this?" Robert asked as we got out of the car. "Every second," I confirmed. He nodded grimly. "Good, she's going to need to see exactly who she's become." What? I used my key to unlock the front door as quietly as possible. The house was warm, filled with the soft sounds of jazz music from the bedroom stereo and muffled voices upstairs. Robert followed close behind me, his breathing controlled but heavy. We could hear them clearly now, Sarah's laughter, Jake's deep voice, the unmistakable sounds of intimacy. I pulled out my phone and started recording, my hands surprisingly steady. This was it, the moment that would change everything. We climbed the stairs slowly, each step deliberate. The bedroom door was half open, light spilling into the hallway. Through the gap I could see movement, shadows dancing on the wall. My wife, my bed, my house. I took a deep breath and kicked the door open. Sarah's scream pierced the air like a fire alarm. She scrambled for the sheets, her face cycling through shock, terror, and something approaching disbelief. Jake froze completely, naked and vulnerable, his confident gym trainer persona evaporating instantly. "What the hell?" he started. "Don't," I said, my voice deadly calm. "Don't say a word." I held up my phone, recording everything. "Say hi to the camera, Sarah." She was hyperventilating now, clutching the sheet to her chest. "This isn't, you weren't supposed to be, how did you?" she stammered. "I wasn't supposed to be home," I asked, stepping into the room, still filming. "In my own house, in my own bedroom." That's when Robert appeared in the doorway behind me. Sarah's face went completely white. "Dad," she whispered. Robert's voice was low and shaking with barely controlled rage. "Get dressed, right now," he commanded. Jake tried to speak, tried to explain. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married, I swear," he pleaded. "Shut your mouth," Robert snapped. "You're in my son-in-law's house, in his bed with my daughter. You think I give a damn what you knew?" I continued recording as Jake scrambled for his clothes, his hands shaking. Sarah just sat there, paralyzed, the reality of the situation crashing over her like a tidal wave. "I found the protection 2 weeks ago," I said conversationally, as if we were discussing the weather. "Been watching you since then. I have everything, every text message, every lie, every time you brought him here." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. No words came. Jake managed to get his pants on and was reaching for his shirt when Robert moved. Fast. He grabbed Jake by the arm and yanked him toward the bedroom door. Jake stumbled, half-dressed, off balance. "Dad, don't," Sarah started. "You lost the right to call me that about 3 months ago," Robert snarled in response. He dragged Jake down the hallway toward the stairs. I followed with my phone, capturing every second. Jake tried to pull away, tried to reason with Robert, but 66 years of construction work had made my father-in-law stronger than he looked. At the top of the stairs, Robert shoved Jake hard. Jake hit the wall, bounced off, stumbled down 3 steps before catching himself. Robert's fist connected with his jaw, a solid right hook that sent Jake crashing into the banister. "That's for disrespecting my family," Robert growled. Jake tried to cover up, blood flowing from his nose. Robert hit him again, this time in the ribs. Jake gasped, doubled over. "And that's for being stupid enough to come back," Robert added. I didn't intervene. I should have, maybe. But watching this man get what he deserved felt like the first thing that had made sense in 2 weeks. We dragged Jake to the front door. He was crying now, actually crying, mumbling apologies and excuses. Robert kicked him hard in the lower back as we threw him onto the front lawn. Don't ever come back, I said simply. If I see you again, if I even hear your name, I'll make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what you are. Jake scrambled to his car, leaving a trail of blood drops on my driveway. His engine started with a roar, and he sped away into the night. Back inside, Sarah was dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, sitting on the edge of the bed, sobbing uncontrollably. Linda had arrived and was standing in the doorway, her own tears falling silently. Please, Sarah whispered when she saw me. I can explain. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Like what? I asked coldly. You weren't supposed to get caught. She looked to her father desperately. Daddy, please, she begged. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Robert looked at her with pure disgust. Sorry doesn't fix this, he replied. He stepped forward and slapped her. Hard, the sound echoed in the room like a gunshot. Sarah fell back onto the bed, holding her cheek, staring at her father in shock. You disgraced yourself, he said quietly. You disgraced your mother and me. You disgraced this man who gave you everything. And for what? Some pretty boy who'll forget your name by next week. I pulled out my suitcase and set it on the dresser. You have 1 hour to pack whatever you can carry, then you're gone, I declared. Where am I supposed to go? She asked desperately. I don't care, I answered. She looked at her parents one more time. Linda was still crying but wouldn't meet her daughter's eyes. Robert's face could have been carved from stone. 1 hour, I repeated. The trap had sprung perfectly. Now came the fallout. What? Sarah tried calling her parents that Friday night from whatever hotel she'd found. They didn't answer. She tried again Saturday morning. And Sunday. On Monday, she showed up at their house in Millfield, desperate and disheveled. Robert met her at the door. Daddy, please, she pleaded. I need help. I don't have anywhere else to go. Should have thought about that before you decided to be a cheating witch, he replied coldly. The word hit her like a physical blow. Robert had never talked to her like that in her entire life. I just need a place to stay until I can figure things out. Please, she begged. You're not welcome here, he stated firmly. He started to close the door, then stopped. Your mother wants me to tell you she's praying for you, but prayer doesn't fix stupid, Sarah. You made your choice. The door closed in her face. Linda watched from the kitchen window, crying, but she didn't intervene. The following Monday, exactly 1 week after I'd caught them, I filed for divorce. My lawyer, Stephen Baker, was like a shark who'd smelled blood in the water. He sent Sarah the papers along with a USB drive containing every video, every screenshot, every piece of evidence we'd gathered. Her lawyer took one look at the evidence and told her the truth. She had no case. 0 leverage. In our state, adultery voided any claim to spousal support. She'd contributed no income to our marriage. The house was in my name, purchased before we married. The cars were in my name. Her name wasn't on any of our accounts. She was going to walk away with nothing. Jake blocked her number after my lawyer sent him a cease and desist letter on Wednesday. Turns out he was married too. His wife found out about Sarah and kicked him out. He wanted nothing to do with the mess he'd helped create. Word spread fast in our social circle. Sarah tried reaching out to friends, but most had already chosen sides. The wife who cheated on the good husband. The woman who betrayed the man who'd given her everything. In a community where appearances mattered, Sarah had become toxic. She moved into a studio apartment across town, the cheapest thing she could find. Got a job waiting tables at a chain restaurant, working nights and weekends. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd tried writing me letters, leaving voicemails, even showing up at my office building once. I blocked her completely, changed my number, hired building security to keep her away from my workplace. The divorce finalized 3 months later, 93 days total. Irreconcilable differences and adultery. She got nothing. No assets, no alimony, no settlement. Just the clothes she'd packed that Friday night and whatever furniture she could afford on a waitress's salary. Her parents never spoke to her again. Linda died 8 months later, A heart attack, but Robert blamed Sarah's betrayal for the stress that killed his wife. Sarah wasn't welcome at the funeral. The house felt strange for a while, too quiet. I repainted the bedroom, bought a new bed, replaced the sheets and curtains, sold her car, deleted every photo of her from my phone and computer. I started dating again after 6 months. Nothing serious, just dinner and movies with women who didn't know my story. It felt good to remember that not everyone was a liar. People sometimes asked if I regretted how hard I'd come down on Sarah, if I thought I'd been too cruel, too calculating. I never answered those questions. I didn't owe anyone an explanation for protecting myself from a woman who'd thrown away 5 years of marriage for cheap thrills. Sarah made her choice. I just made sure she lived with the consequences. It's been 18 months now since that Tuesday when I found the truth. I'm sitting in my kitchen, drinking my morning coffee and reading the news on my tablet. The house is quiet, but it's a good quiet now, peaceful instead of empty. I don't think about Sarah every day anymore. Maybe once a week, usually when something reminds me, a song on the radio, a couple holding hands at the grocery store, the anniversary date of our wedding passing by unnoticed. But the thoughts don't hurt now. They're just memories, like remembering a movie I watched years ago. Last month, I heard through a friend of a friend that she's still working at that restaurant, still living in the studio apartment, still alone. I don't feel victorious about it. I don't feel vindicated. I just feel nothing, and that's exactly right. People used to ask me if I'd ever forgive her, if I'd consider taking her back if she begged hard enough. The question always confused me. Forgiveness implies that someone deserves a second chance, that their betrayal was an accident, a mistake, a moment of weakness. But Sarah's affair wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. Hundreds of choices made over months, each one a deliberate act of betrayal. You don't accidentally delete text messages. You don't accidentally lie about where you've been. You don't accidentally bring another man into your husband's bed. I've been seeing someone new for the past 3 months. Jennifer. She's a teacher, divorced, has 2 kids. She's kind and honest and asks direct questions when something bothers her. We take things slow, building trust one conversation at a time. The difference is striking. With Sarah, I realize now I was always performing, being the perfect husband, the successful provider, the man who deserved loyalty. With Jennifer, I'm just myself. Flawed, careful, protective of my heart, but willing to risk it again for the right person. I got a promotion at work, bought a new truck, started going to the gym. Life moves forward. The house is mine now, really mine. No ghosts, no bad memories, no shadows of betrayal. I've made it into something new, a place where trust matters, where honesty is the foundation, where love is earned and respected. And Sarah is a lesson I learned. Nothing more, nothing less. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate or dramatic. Sometimes it's just living well while the person who betrayed you lives with the choices they made. That's justice, that's peace, that's enough. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.